The live-action Cinderella movie, directed by Kenneth Branagh, was released in 2015. This film is a magical retelling of the classical fairy tale, where a kind-hearted girl named Ella, who is filled with kindness and courage, faces many obstacles in her life, and just by the power of magic, she ends up living a happily ever after. Film Cinderella uses the fantasy genre that enhances our understanding of the story by immersing us in the magical world where dreams come true. It allows us to escape from reality and experience the enchantment of fairy tales. First fantasy element utilized in magic is Fairy Godmother's ability to use her magic wand, which helps explore to us that the Fairy Godmother uses her magic to transform things into anything Cinderella wishes. Cinderella's dress was destroyed by her evil stepmothers and sisters. As you can see in these images, her dress is all torn to pieces. Cinderella then makes her way into the garden of her cottage house and just starts crying in her sadness. And eventually Cinderella turns around and sees an old, elderly lady just in her garden begging for milk or something to drink. So then Cinderella goes and fetches this lady milk. And then when she comes back, this lady is a magical fairy godmother. The fairy godmother then put a magical spell on Cinderella. As the fairy godmother pointed her wand at Cinderella, she all of a sudden had a magical blue dress on, as you see in these pictures. It has butterflies on it and everything. And even though Cinderella had a beautiful dress for the ball, there were still some things missing. Cinderella needed something to arrive in the ball in. The fairy godmother and Cinderella searched their garden and tried to find the perfect item to turn into a carriage for Cinderella. As time passed, the fairy godmother and Cinderella finally found the perfect item, which was a pumpkin. What the fairy godmother had to do is point her magical wand at the pumpkin, and poof, there's a carriage. And you think that's it, but there's more. Cinderella now needed footmen and coachmen for the carriage. The fairy godmother didn't know how she'd pull this off, but she walked around the garden and found 2 lizards and a white goose. The fairy godmother then took out her wand, pointed it to the 3 animals, the lizard and the goose, and bam! They started turning into humans. As you see on the bottom picture, to the very edge, I think it's on the right, the lizard's transforming into a human, and then that's the goose and the lizard on the far left as humans, which is pretty interesting how they did that. Very cool. Cinderella thought she was ready to go to the ball. She kind of got in the carriage and lifted up her dress so you could kind of see her shoes. And the fairy godmother did not accept the shoes that Cinderella was wearing. Her shoes were sort of old ballet shoes that were dirty, and they weren't really royal ball material. So all the fairy godmother had to do was point her magical wand and put a spell on Cinderella's shoes. All of a sudden there was light, glitter, just magic in the air, and poof, Cinderella had her own pair of royal slippers, glass slippers. Personally, Cinderella's. In this scene, we see that these images are showing Cinderella running down away from the prince at the ball. So in this picture, we see obviously Cinderella running down the stairs, and we see that her slipper is left behind in these pictures. And she looks back at the slipper, knowing that if she runs back to grab it, it'll be midnight and she will go back to how she originally was before the fairy godmother put the spell on her. The fantasy element that I've been talking about in the story is about the glass slipper, and this helps us explore that the glass slipper is unique to her, Cinderella, and also shows that true magic lies between oneself. Back to the story. So in these pictures, we see that all the girls in the land are basically wanting to try on the slipper because Prince Charming has said that whoever fits in the slipper he's going to marry. On the picture on the right, it shows Cinderella's evil stepsisters trying to get the shoe to fit, but it obviously doesn't because the shoe is personalized to Cinderella. And on the picture on the left is the Prince Charming putting on the glass slipper of Cinderella's foot, and it perfectly matches. The final fantasy element utilized in the story is the time limit on the magical spells, which helps to explore that all Cinderella's magical spells have a time limit, which can be used also as a reminder that Cinderella needs to make the most of her time with the prince, obviously before all of her spells go back and fade away. These pictures on the far right, the fairy godmother tells Cinderella that she has to be back before midnight or else all the powers and magic will go away and she'll be back to how she was. And the pictures on the bottom left and top left are a picture of the bell tower that Cinderella uses to keep track of the time, and she also uses it to listen for the final strike of the clock at midnight. These images, we see that all of Cinderella's spells have officially faded back to how they originally were in the beginning. Let me explain to you guys how this happened. So, after Prince Charming grabbed Cinderella's slipper, Cinderella ran to her carriage, leaving her glass slipper behind. It's all chaotic. Like, she has to go before anyone catches how she originally looks and how, like, everything is not real, like everything's on a spell. Cinderella gets in the carriage and hauls it back to her castle or her cottage. So the prince sends all of his soldiers to follow Cinderella back to wherever she's going because she's a mysterious girl. They're trying to figure out who she is. Princess loses the soldiers and makes it back, but still is in her old clothes. The end.